Thank you so much for joining us for CBN News Watch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, Israel battling on four fronts in what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calls Israel's second war of independence. We're going to look at the threats the Jewish state is facing and the new concerns from Iran and Turkey. Hamas using not only human shields, but also hiding its main base of operations under the largest hospital in Gaza. Among those trapped in Gaza, hundreds of Americans. We're going to look at the roadblocks preventing them from getting out. And as fighting grows along the border with Israel, many in Lebanon are fleeing their homes. We're going to hear from one pastor who says he's staying with his church no matter the cost. All those stories and more today on CBN News Watch.
This is CBN News Watch.
Let's begin this half hour in Israel, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is warning of a long and difficult war in Gaza, calling it, quote, our second war for independence. His statement to the country coming as Israel increasing its attacks against Hamas, and anti-Semitism is on the rise around the world. CBN's Chris Mitchell has our report now from Jerusalem.
Israel is fighting on four fronts. In Gaza, the IDF released footage of its methodical ground invasion of the Gaza Strip as it continues its air bombardment of Hamas infrastructure. On the northern border, the military continues to attack Hezbollah installations. For days, Hezbollah and the IDF have traded rockets, artillery, and anti-tank missiles. In Syria, Israeli warplanes attacked a site that shot missiles toward Israel. And in the West Bank, Israel struck a terrorist squad inside the city of Jenin. In a televised news conference Saturday night, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told Israelis that Israel has opened a new phase in the war.
The war inside the Gaza Strip will be long and difficult, and we are ready for it. This is our second war for independence. We will fight for our native land. We will fight and won't back down. It will be the victory of good over bad, of light over darkness, of life over death.
Netanyahu also highlighted the role of Iran in the attacks. He said 90% of Hamas's military budget comes from Iran, and that without Iran, there's no Hamas or Hezbollah. Also this weekend, the Prime Minister met with the relatives of the hostages. Many of the families are worried the ground invasion will endanger the hostages and support a prisoner swap to free their loved ones. Netanyahu pledged to work as hard as he could to rescue those hostages, saying the government would exercise and exhaust every possibility to bring them home. The official number of hostages is now 239.
It's an unbelievable number. 239 kidnapped. Among the kidnapped are citizens, foreign workers, not a small number whose identities and reaching their families is complex for us, and it takes time to build this picture. Hence, the number that I mentioned, 239.
Meanwhile, the UN warns civil order is breaking down in Gaza after thousands of people broke into UN warehouses and took food and water. The fallout from the war is spreading to the nations. In Dagestan, Russia, an anti-Semitic mob stormed an airport where a plane from Tel Aviv landed. The crowd hunting Jews fleeing the war in Israel, eventually going onto the tarmac and surrounding the plane. Israel's ambassador to Russia is looking for safe passage for them, and the chief rabbi of Dagestan says about 400 Jewish families may need to be evacuated. The Prime Minister's and Foreign Ministry released a statement saying, the state of Israel takes seriously attempts to harm Israeli citizens and Jews everywhere. Israel expects the Russian law enforcement authorities to protect the safety of all Israeli citizens and Jews wherever they may be. Russia's ambassador to Israel, Anatoly Viktorov, was summoned this morning to a protest call at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Jerusalem, following the visit of the Hamas delegation to Moscow. And in Turkey, Turkish President Recep Erdogan called Hamas a liberation group and labeled Israel a war criminal for its actions inside Gaza.
And Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem. So, Chris, you did indeed cover a lot in your report just there. Let's start with Israel's ground attacks in Gaza. We've been expecting a major ground invasion, but it seems like we're getting a smaller strike instead. Is there a plan for a buildup gradually toward a major assault?
Well, I think right now, Ephraim, they're moving deliberately. Remember, Hamas has been preparing for this kind of invasion for many years with tunnels and booby traps and ambushes. Israel's learned a lot since its last invasion in 2014. So they want to minimize casualties on both sides. Israelis have seen enough dead family members, so it's very important for Israelis that they minimize IDF soldiers and not to put them unnecessarily in harm's way. Also, they're trying to minimize civilian casualties on the other side. They're sending leaflets, they're calling people, still telling people now to leave harm's way and go to the south where it's much safer, even though Hamas is trying to prevent them to leave. So there's really two reasons why the IDF is doing that. They really want to save lives on the other side, and they don't want Hamas to use them as human shields so they can use them for propaganda. And some of these people that they're preventing to leave, they're doing it even at gunpoint, Ephraim.
How much is the hostage situation holding up a full-scale attack?
Well, I think since the very beginning, Israel has been trying to balance two main goals. One is to defeat Hamas totally so that they're never a threat to Israel ever again. The second one is to rescue the hostages. And so they seem at odds with each other. So it's a balancing act, trying to get the right balance. One reason for the incursion is that Israel didn't feel that Hamas was negotiating in good faith. There was a proposal at one time for maybe 6,000 prisoners for all of the hostages. And Ephraim, right now, we're actually hearing stories that some fear the hostages, some of them anyway, may be on their way to Iran and smuggled through the Rafah crossing into Egypt.
You mentioned Iran. Israel says without Iran, there is no Hamas or Hezbollah. Now, Iran says Israel has crossed red lines in its war with Hamas, but it didn't say specifically what that means. Does Israel expect Iran to step up its involvement with Hamas or Hezbollah?
Well, right now, I'm not sure how much they can get involved with Hamas. Hamas seems right now almost encircled from the sea, from the north, from the east. So I'm not sure what more Iran can do. And if Israel achieves its military goals, it won't be able to smuggle any more weapons or funds in there. However, on the Hezbollah is a different story. And the anticipation, Ephraim, has been that Hezbollah could enter the war on a major scale, maybe once Israel went into the Gaza Strip in a major way. So far, it hasn't happened, and perhaps Iran's statements are just bluster right now, and they don't want to necessarily expend a long-term investment that they've put billions of dollars into Hezbollah military infrastructure. And so we just don't know right now exactly if this is bluster by Iran or if they're going to, use Hezbollah to go ahead and invade northern Israel.
Chris, what about the statements against Israel from Turkey's president? Is there concern Turkey could send military forces to Gaza?
Well, I just got off the phone with a Turkish expert, and he said, the rhetoric is very fiery, and he says, it is rhetoric. But he says sometimes, when you start a fire, you don't know how far it's going to go. So we'll just see what's happening. Certainly the diplomatic relationship that actually had been improving earlier this year right now is fractured. But I was just listening to some of that speech, Ephraim. He's really calling for, even possibility of troops coming down to Gaza. I mean, it is rhetoric right now, but you had 1 million plus Turks there calling for that. So we'll see. It's very, very concerning here in Israel.
We saw a mob storming an airport in Russia looking for Jews. Is the Israeli government worried about the growing trend of anti-Semitism around the world?
Yeah, Ephraim, not only the Israeli government, but I would say Jews around the world. And maybe this is one of the most troubling aspects for Israel and the Jewish people, not necessarily the Hamas and Hezbollah threats, but, this anti-Semitism is just really something I don't think anybody's quite seen to this scale, reverberating throughout the Jewish world. You hear marches with tens of thousands in major cities like London. You see the Jewish students locked in a library in New York, with pro-Hamas students pounding on the door. All of this is very concerning, not only to the Israeli government, but to the Jewish people around the world.
Our Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell from Jerusalem. Thank you so much, Chris. We continue to pray for you and encourage you. Please stay safe. As we continue our coverage, the Israel Defense Force says hundreds of terrorists are hiding behind human shields. Hamas is also using churches, schools, and hospitals as cover for its operations in Gaza, including its main base of operations underneath Gaza's largest hospital. CBN's George Thomas brings us that story from southern Israel.
Dr. Nasser Bulbal, head of the NICU at Al-Shifa, Gaza's largest hospital, says they are on the verge of running out of critical supplies to keep some of their most vulnerable patients alive.
We do not know what to do, as we are facing a severe shortage of medical supplies, ventilators, and essential life-saving medicines.
While Gazans continue to face severe shortages deep beneath Al-Shifa Hospital, Israel says Hamas has stored up ample food, water, fuel, and other critical supplies, including weapons, to carry out its war against the Jewish state.
Hamas terrorists operate inside and under Shifa Hospital and other hospitals in Gaza with network of terror tunnels.
The IDF releasing this animated video claiming that the terror group operates its command and control headquarters from several underground complexes beneath Al-Shifa.
Hamas also has an entrance to those terror tunnels from inside the hospital wards, meaning from different places of the hospital, you can go into an underground tunnel that will provide you shelter.
The Islamist militant group which controls the Gaza Strip has been using human shields in conflicts with Israel since 2007.
I know what it feels like to be used as a human shield. Back in 2014, during Israel's war with Hamas, I was in Gaza City, and almost every night I could see Hamas fighters assemble, then fire off their rockets from the basement of my hotel. Hamas knew without a shadow of a doubt that the Israelis would not target the hotel because it was filled with foreign journalists.
A captured Hamas fighter who infiltrated Israel on October 7th, telling interrogators that the terror group uses hospitals like Al-Shifa to hide their fighters and weapons because such places are often teeming with civilians.
I told you, Shifa is a safe place. It will not be struck. To them, it is safe. And that is what we know.
And it's just not hospitals. Hamas often uses structures closest to schools, mosques, and even churches, from which they can hide weapons, fighters, and launch rockets. On October 20th, a prominent Greek Orthodox church in Gaza City sustained heavy damage when Israel hit the headquarters of a Hamas commander. The IDF releasing this video of the strike to CBN News, telling us that the terrorist's home was 50 meters from the church. The ensuing explosion destroying a part of the church and reportedly killing 18 Palestinian Christians.
Hamas not only endangers the lives of Israelis, civilians, but also exploit innocent Gazan civilians as human shield. The IDF will continue making efforts to minimize harm to civilians' population and will continue to act in accordance with international law.
George Thomas, CBN News, along the Israel-Gaza border.
Coming up, among those trapped in Gaza are hundreds of Americans. We're going to bring you the story of one family among those trying to get home and the roadblocks in their way. When we come back, stay with us.
Download the CBN News app. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Watch CBN News Channel Live. CBN News, because truth matters. Get the CBN News app today.
International aid agencies have been limiting operations in the Gaza Strip because they're running out of supplies, and some of the families most in need of aid are American citizens, as an estimated 500 to 600 Palestinian Americans are in Gaza. CBN correspondent Hillary Powell is tracking the situation and brings us this look at the people who are being affected.
Airstrikes in the Gaza Strip are getting closer to Palestinian-American Aboud Akal. He snapped this picture moments after one.
Today is day 19 of the war. We're still in Rafah. We've been trying to stay strong, but it hasn't been easy. Airstrikes have intensified. My son was not able to sleep Yusuf not until 1 o'clock in the morning.
The 36-year-old never thought visiting family in Gaza earlier this month would leave him stranded in a war zone with his wife Wafa and 1-year-old son Yusuf. Desperately trying to get back home to Massachusetts, they're huddling in a home with 10 Americans near the Rafah border crossing into Egypt. Their family lawyer says the U.S. State Department hasn't done enough.
We are all so frustrated with the State Department. We're able to get communications with them. There is still no confirmed departure option for a single American citizen in Gaza.
For American families trapped in Gaza, the lack of aid is becoming increasingly dire. The Okals weaned their 1-year-old off milk because there is none. A spokesperson for the U.S. State Department tells CBN News there is no higher priority than the safety of U.S. citizens abroad, and they're working tirelessly to secure safe departure.
And of course, if Rafah Gate is open to allow humanitarian aid to go in, we will be trying to get out the American citizens who are in Gaza who want to leave.
Legal experts in humanitarian aid say there are laws that govern how to keep innocents safe.
There are actual rules and laws that deal with how war is conducted. And the main reason for that is that we're trying to protect people who are sort of innocently caught in the middle of wartime.
A major part of that law is found in the 4 Geneva Conventions of 1949, which the Red Cross says is adopted by all nations of the world. They forbid the destruction of food, water, and other materials necessary for survival. In diplomatic breakthroughs, aid from Egypt is entering Gaza over the last few days, where the population of 2.3 million has been running out of food, water, and medicine since Israel sealed the territory after the October 7th attacks by Hamas terrorists. Israel is cautious about delivering aid, citing examples of Hamas stealing humanitarian aid in the past. In a social post on X, President Joe Biden seeming to highlight aid law, echoing U.S. support for Israel's defense while, quote, operating consistent with the law of war. The Okal family now has one more life they're watching over, a cat little Yusuf found, Milka, taking some comfort during chaos.
Hillary Powell, CBN News.
Hillary tells us a foreign affairs officer has now been assigned to this family, monitoring their safety, and the State Department says it is working urgently in partnership with Egypt and Israel to work out the exit of U.S. citizens and their immediate family members from Gaza. But they say Hamas is blocking anyone from inside Gaza from getting out as humans, using them as human shields. Still ahead, as the war could possibly expand to more fighting in northern Israel against Hezbollah out of Lebanon, many people there are fleeing from the danger zones or even leaving the country. But one pastor tells CBN News why he is staying with his congregation no matter the price. We're going to hear from him right after this. Israel launched strikes into Lebanon over the weekend after rockets were launched from that country into the Jewish states. As fighting grows with Hezbollah along Israel's northern border, fear is rising on the Lebanon side. Many people are moving to the north or leaving the country altogether. One Beirut pastor tells CBN no matter what happens, he is determined to stay to help his congregation and country no matter the cost. Wendy Griffith brings us this story.
Everybody expecting the worst to happen. Everybody is afraid.
Pastor Saeed Deeb leads a church at the Life Center in Beirut. He says Lebanon is in a panic.
The embassies are calling their people to leave Lebanon immediately, all the embassies. So people are leaving, are fleeing. There is kind of a panic on the airport. People are, scared because they don't know when the war will start.
Since the October 7th massacre, there's been an increase in military activity between Israel and Hezbollah along the border. Deeb, who survived the 2020 Beirut port explosion and has lived through numerous wars, says he's not afraid.
I have peace in my heart this time that there will be no wars in Jesus' name. Why? Why I have this assurance? Because we are praying. We launched 50 hours fasting and prayer around the clock, and we believe God for the peace.
Since this latest fighting began in Israel, Deeb says more people are showing up at church, even non-believers.
People's hearts are open in the neighborhood. They come to me, please, can we can you sign us for the Bible Institute? And we have 360 students now every day.
The church, located in one of Beirut's poorest areas, also provides meals and other essential items to people, including many refugees from Armenia, Iraq, and Palestine.
Everybody who comes to the church, and for the Bible students, we offer them food.
Hezbollah is Lebanon's strongest political and military force. And for Lebanese Christians, it can be a complicated subject. There can be both support and blame for Israel. So even discussing politics can be dangerous. That's why Pastor Deeb remains focused on the mission of preaching Jesus and praying for peace.
The church will need us. The people will need us, because if in case wars will take place, this is where the most we are needed. I cannot flee the country, leaving my people dying and leaving everybody getting hungry or suffering in shelters. And this will break my heart.
He says if bombs start to fall, he has a place to hide.
Yes, I have one place. The Lord is my shelter and refuge. This is the only place I have. And trust me, it worked with us. The Lord told me in 2006 one thing. He said, the safest place on planet Earth is to be in the will of God. My will is the safest place to be.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
For more information on the Life Center Church in Beirut and how you can help, simply go to cbnnews.com. We'll be right back with an encouraging word for your day ahead and to start your week. Stay with us.
Get your daily quick start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.
Time now for your Monday motivation, and today I want to leave you with this thought as we begin another week together. There is a process to promise. Be patient. If God said it shall happen, process may be painful, but He is preparing you for promise. With that word, I encourage you to make this a marvelous Monday, and be sure to have yourself a wonderful week. I want you to do that on purpose and with purpose. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. You can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online. That is cbnnews.com. Let us know what you think about today's stories. You can do that by emailing us, newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We certainly would love to hear from you. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for watching. God bless. We'll see you right back here same time tomorrow.